the night, riding in shining armor. Then he got jaded by nightmares of snake-eyed charmers. Inhaled the light, embracing the dark neon rain. In her mind's eye, she hears a hope for refrain. Refrain. Here's to sundown Susie, a child of the night. An after hours doozy, but now she's seen the lights. The reapers no more surrounds her, in the floodlights of such grace. Through the darkly mirror she now beholds his face. Her dream fulfilled of a night riding into her life, giving her strength, expose the dark to his bright light. This grace a jailbreak, freedom from all that's ensnared. With open eyes, she fears her long for refrain. Here's to sundown Susie, a child of the night. An after hours doozy, but now she's seen the lights. The reapers no more surrounds her, in the floodlights of such grace. Through the darkly mirror she now beholds his face. Sundown Susie, a child of the night. An after hours doozy, but now she's seen the lights. The reapers no more surrounds her, in the floodlights of such grace. Through the darkly mirror she now beholds his face. Here's to sundown Susie, a child of the night. An after hours doozy, but now she's seen the lights. The reapers no more surrounds her, in the floodlights of such grace. Through the darkly mirror she now beholds his face.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the show. It's a solo show. Unfortunately, I apologize. My comrade in arms, Jonny Guy, is not here. But rest assured, he's okay. He's fine. He's just pretty tired. So he needed an evening to just go and chill, basically. So that's what I told him to do. I said, go rest. You need your rest. So that's what he's doing. So Jonny, if you're watching, we love you. We think you're awesome. Have a nice rest. And we'll catch up with you on Sunday, hopefully, if you're available for Sunday night show. Or back here for Sunday Night Live. So that's the story there. We got lots of people in tonight, which is awesome. So thank you everybody for coming. I really appreciate it an awful lot. You guys are most incredibly marvelous. So thank you for coming. So as it says in the title down there somewhere, that this is a Q&A show. So I'm basically after your questions about songwriting and arranging, composing, music theory, musicology, that kind of stuff, which is what Jonny and I tend to deal with for the most part in our show together. So it would be awesome if we could get some of those questions. So the reason why you heard the music at the start there play all the way through was because it was kind of covering for me needing to go to the bathroom, which is just behind that door out there. So it was a short trip. So I figured this song runs for about 5 minutes, just under. So I have 5 minutes to go for a pee and come back and be sat in the chair before the song finishes. So that was a song called Sundown Susie, which was recorded way back in way back in the year 2001, believe it or not. I think I was running Cubase SX1, I think it was back then. And so yeah, so that was when it was recorded, but it didn't actually make it onto a record until 2013, when I released an album called Swings on Roundabouts, which is sadly no longer available. But yeah, it was a reasonable record. There's some good songs on it. And I think probably that one song, Sundown Susie, is probably one of the most kind of romantic type songs that I have ever written. I'm not really a kind of romantic kind of songwriting kind of guy. That's just not my style. It's not kind of the style of songs that I write. But yeah, you know how it is. I have talked about this quite a bit on this Wednesday night Songwriting Simplified show, where I talk quite a bit about how I like to create characters and put them in a scenario and see kind of what happens to them. And so that's kind of what happened with this particular song. It was a case of I invented this character who is she's basically it says there she's a child of the night. She's a hooker basically, and a guy basically comes and rescues her from that seedy dark world, and that's what the song is essentially about. She spends a lot of time yearning for a knight in shining armor to come and sweep her off her feet and take her away from what she's involved in, and she gets lucky. The guy comes along and basically takes her at face value and says it doesn't matter what you've been through or what you've done, or you know how your life has ended up the way it is. I'm going to take you out of it, just because of nothing else. Then you're just you. And so it's kind of a story of grace, really, and that's what I liked about it. And then the trick really was finding the right kind of music to kind of be the bed for this narrative. And so plus I also set myself a bit of a harmonic challenge. As you'll notice, the chord changes move by an interval of a minor third rather than kind of regular kind of 1-6-2-5-1 style chord progression. So it's an interesting song from a lot of different points of view. There's a nice little alto sax solo there. In fact, there's one in the middle, and then there's the outro alto sax solo, which was done all in one take. It was great alto player, great solo. So yeah, and the strings came from a very, very old sample library that I definitely think is no longer available. I doubt it's available because I got that strings library, I think, in 1999. So yeah, highly unlikely that it is available or runs on anything modern. So so there you go. Just Bob said, so it's a retelling of Julia Roberts' Pretty Woman. Not deliberately. That's for sure. It wasn't deliberately a retelling of that story. But yeah, interesting that you bring that up, because the guy who I had in my mind was not kind of a rich, wealthy guy who then falls in love with the hooker. It's a little bit different. He's just kind of an average, ordinary kind of guy who just wants to get her out of the business, basically. And so he does. All right, so let's get to your questions, because a few of you have started chiming in. But before we do that, we're going to see who was first in the door. And the first in the door award for tonight goes to Sean Aaron, who was first in the door a whole hour before showtime, which is pretty impressive. Second place goes to Billy Morgan. Third place goes to Paul Morgan. Awesome. Fourth place is Michael at Music to Motion, which is cool. Who else is here? Just Bob is here. Ironweed Studios, Marcos Gomez over in Brazil. Carl Jedruziak is here. It's live, Jim, but not as we know it. Yes, it most certainly is. And I love the Star Trek reference because I love Star Trek. In fact, I have an arrangement of the original Alexander Courage Star Trek theme that I used to play with my band. It was when I had the big funk band, and we played that as kind of the show opener. Just because it's a fun thing to do. Anyway, let's see. Alps Media is here. My good friend Louis is here. John Lake is here as well. Lockdown Band is here as well. Who else have I missed? And Chris over at Deer Creek Audio is here as well. He says, hello, is there a dress code? Don't own any dresses. Probably pink for you, I would think. Chris. Yeah, maybe pink. In your case. Don Oliver is here. Tony Stringer is here. And Just Bob is very helpfully announcing me. He says, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, your host for the evening. Bob, I've got to get you to record that as a voiceover. That would be awesome. And then we can use that as the show opener. That would be cool. Got to get somebody to do it. Ronald Figura is here. He says, be sure to tip your bartenders and waitresses. Yes, everyone with a blue wrench is one of those. Let's see, Secret Scrolls here as well. Thomas over in the Philippines is here as well, which is cool. Okay, I'm going to start getting to these questions now, I think, because we're like 15 minutes in, so we should. Marco says, I know it's not new, but here money is very hard about buying gear. My analog gear being plugged will need a newer interface. Firebox, even old, can run fine with Windows 11. No, it is not supported. You can try it, but it is not supported. So if it does not work, you'll get no support. You'll get no help from PreSonus support. And you'll not be able to send it in for repair or anything like that. Just ain't supported anymore. That little guy is pretty old, to say the least. So there are no up-to-date drivers for it that I'm aware of that are even Windows 11 compatible. So I think you're probably out of luck in that regard. So you would be looking at maybe something a little bit more kind of up to date from PreSonus if you're after a PreSonus interface. And especially with Black Friday coming up, there may, I don't know what marketing do. Marketing are, they are involved in the dark arts. So I have no idea what they get up to. But I'm sure, there may be some kind of discounts going on. I don't know what they are, whether there's hardware or software. I don't know. But yeah, just, kind of keep an eye out and see what's available. But yes, I do understand that in places like Brazil, it's not always financially viable to buy the very latest gear. So I do totally understand you from that point of view for sure. But yeah, the Fire Studio or the Firebox or any of those, or even the Fire Station, those guys are pretty ancient. Those devices even predate PreSonus headquarters moving into the Highland Road building which we did in 2013, 2014, I think. So yeah, those are pretty old. Don't think you'll find that they work. Music Motion says, I'm attempting to write a Christmas like or holiday song. Is it fairly standard for these to have 2-5-1 or 1-2-5 chord progressions? I think that is what I'm hearing. Yeah, a lot of Christmas / holiday type songs tend to feature fairly standard sets of chord changes. So you could go for 3-6-2-5-1. You could go 1-4-5. You could go 1-6-2-5. Any of those would get you in the ballpark for a good kind of Christmas song. I mean, you could kind of go, you could kind of go C, A minor, D minor, G7, and then your middle section could be E7, A7, D7, G7. Maybe do that again. D minor. Something like that would get you definitely in the ballpark for something that is going to be good for kind of Christmas. And sleigh bells. Gotta have sleigh bells. No sleigh bells, no Christmas song. So get those in there. It's kind of like cowbell for, gotta have more sleigh bells. Double track those suckers and pan them wide. Let's see. Secret Squirrel says, for us new to production, are there benefits to punch points versus multiple take lanes? If so, would you mind touching impact on both on workflow efficiency / use case differences? That's a massive question. There you go. Massive question. I think it kind of depends on what you're used to. If you're new to music production, using auto punch with looping might be a good way for you to go, and therefore record takes to layers. And then you can comp your layers into your master take. I have definitely done that. I do that more with things like improvisations, guitar solos, bass solos. The world needs more bass solos, let's face it. So, yeah. And so, or if there is a particular section that I'm just kind of stuck on and I'm just not getting right, sometimes I'll loop it and do takes to layers until I get it. And then when I get it, I will, promote that particular layer to the top, and then that becomes my master take for that section. And then I can render it in, I can, to make it more kind of permanent. You can certainly do that, or, kind of duplicating the track. Don't do duplicate complete, just do duplicate track, and then set yourself up to go again. You can certainly do it that way. I think, to be honest, it's probably more of a preference thing, which way you prefer. I think for many, many years, I would just duplicate the track and go again, basically, is what I would do. That's what I did for many, many years in Cubase. I knew that there was definitely a way to punch and do takes to layers, or the Cubase equivalent in Cubase, but I didn't really like doing it, so I just kind of didn't really. I'll be honest. I would just duplicate track, and there was a shortcut for that in Cubase. I don't know whether there still is. I don't even know if there is one a shortcut. Dear God, shortcut for duplicating track in Studio One. There probably is. If there is, then great. But really, I don't work that way anymore. I tend to do takes to layers, and it works well for me. I think it's a pretty quick way to work as well. But it is, to be honest, it is a matter of personal preference. Try one of those workflows and decide which one is going to be the most efficient for you, and then just go for it. Commit to it. Go for it. Denzel Washington story playing Equalizer type story. Well done. Yeah, I guess it could be, Dwayne. Yeah, I guess. I wasn't really. I don't think I had a particular. I know that there may be kind of a lot of those kind of films around where there's, hooker finds good guy rescues hooker, they go off and they live happily ever after forever. But yeah, I don't think I actually had anything in mind in particular. It is very windy outside. And I'm watching my blind, which is behind the camera that you can't see, kind of moving its way towards me because I have the window open just a hair, but it's pretty windy out there now. Anyway, I hope the mic isn't picking it up. But yeah, I wasn't really thinking of a particular film, but now that you guys are all mentioning, Pretty Woman and Equalizer and all of that, I'm kind of thinking, yeah, maybe there is something to that, and maybe I was thinking of that kind of in the back of my mind. Thomas says you can take the girl out of the bar, but you can't take the girl out from the bar. Maybe. I'm not convinced by that argument, but yes, it is possible. Just Bob says I'm not proud that I know that movie. About Pretty Woman. Peter Brooks says, I have bought many saxophone VSTs in the past. Yeah, me too. However, I'm still looking for the best. Anyone have any suggestions on a good saxophone VST? Well, there's the Chris Hine horns, which I think is still around, and I think is still available, actually. I can't remember who still makes it, but that is very, very good. It's a horn section, but you do have some really good sax sounds and sax samples within that. The thing with saxophone is it's hard to get right because there are so many tiny little tonal variations and inflections that you can create on the instrument just by the way you phrase or the way you tongue a particular phrase. So, there is a technique which is called colloquially swallowing the note, which basically means you make the note into a kind of ghosted note. And you hear that a lot in popular music, on saxophone. You hear that a lot in jazz. You hear that all over the place in jazz saxophone. Mostly because people like Lester Young and Charlie Parker started doing it. Where you would kind of... it's kind of like an inflection where you kind of... It's hard to explain, but you totally de-emphasize a strong note and you emphasize a weak note. So we're talking rhythmically here, and it creates this kind of like off-kilter rhythmic effect, and you end up kind of like making the weaker note very, very soft in comparison to the other notes around it. And so things like that are quite hard to get on a VST instrument, unless there are sampled phrases that you can use which contain all of those. But in terms of just playing the notes in, you're going to find it hard because you're going to have to make sure that there are, kind of velocity level, multiple layered velocity level samples of the instrument playing some of these kind of effects, so that when you play the instrument, it sounds very, very convincing because you have those different dynamic levels and different intonations and that kind of thing going on. So that's something to bear in mind when you're looking for a good saxophone VST. And of course, the more multi-layered they are, the more expensive they are. It is just what it is, unfortunately. So yeah, I know that's kind of a little bit of a non-answer, but I hope it helps you kind of give you kind of some direction to head in and things to look for in a good saxophone VST. But yeah, the best ones are expensive, unfortunately. Jazz and Big Band by Garatan is a very good option. I have heard those, and they are pretty good. One thing I would recommend is, if you can, if you're playing something like a saxophone or a trumpet VST, is, considering, if you're going to be doing it a lot, especially, consider investing in a breath controller, something like an Akai Iwi, like the Iwi 5000, for example, or the Iwi USB. I have one. It currently doesn't work. It needs repaired because I have had it for a long time. And the drivers need updated and all sorts of things need updated on it so that it will work in Studio One, because currently it does not work in Studio One. So there are things that I need to fix on my Iwi, but something like that would be really good, because you can kind of get those kind of subtle nuances into the way you play and into the way you input into the breath controller sensor on the instrument. That will give you another layer of realism. But it does mean you're going to have to learn saxophone fingering. So that's kind of the drawback. But there you go. Let's see. Billy Morgan says, please hit the thumbs up, friends. Yes, please. Please do that. I kind of missed something there, I think. Maybe I didn't. Secret Squirrel has to run to an online meeting. I'll mute the show, but keep it running so that I get the stats. Thank you, Secret Squirrel. I appreciate that a lot. Have a good meeting, mate. Don Oliver asks a really good question. Do you build a template when starting a song in Studio One? Generally speaking, I don't, unless I'm working on like an EP or an album where I know that I'm going to be using by and largely the same setup. So if I know I'm going to have lead vocals, double lead of the lead vocal, 4 backing vocal parts or 5 backing vocal parts, which is my normal, 5 or 6 piece horn section, 3 guitars, piano, Fender Rhodes electric piano, Hammond organ, bass, drums, and maybe some percussion. If I know that that's going to be the instrumentation, the setup for the whole record, then yes, I will create a template for that. That just gives me all of those channels in an instant when I create the song. Creating templates is actually very, very easy in Studio One. You just create a new song, you set up how you would for song number 1, and then you just save it as a template. And then every time you open, when you go to do the next song, so the next new song, then you just open that new song with your newly created template, and then everything is just there and all routed how you need it to be, and you're ready to go. And it means that you're moving quickly. Let's say you're tracking live for, 10, 15 songs for a record, but you're going to track them live. And you're going to try and get the songs done in 1, maybe 2 takes. Then, you have your band all set up, everything is all routed into Studio One in your template. Then you just do, create new song, open it with that template, and you record and enable the tracks, and you're good to go. And then you record that song, you do a couple of passes maybe, you save it, you move on, new song, open with that template, and you're ready to go for song number 3. It's actually a really quick, easy, fast way to work. But if I'm just working on an individual song, then I don't tend to do that. I tend to kind of just add things in as and when I need them, to be honest. But yeah, it's a good question. Paul Morgan says, when you have a chorus and verse you like, any tips on expanding it? I get stuck at the third verse all the time. Verses are hard, and here's the reason why they're hard. Because you want the listener to see the whole thing. Here's the key. The key to a successful song is engagement. You have to keep the listener engaged from bar one, beat one, all the way through to the very end of your song, whether your song has an arranged ending or if it has a fade out. You need to make sure that your listener is always engaged. Now, the thing with verses for most contemporary songs these days, and the way we have written songs since maybe the late 1960s, generally speaking, there are some variations on this, obviously. Bob Dylan has done some variations on this, but for the most part, what we tend to do is we tend to use the same melody and the same chord changes for every verse of the song. So if your song has like 3 or 4 verses, you're going to be using the same melody and the same chord changes. And that leads you into danger number 1. Danger number 1 is that each verse starts to sound the same, which means your listener is going to disengage. And you don't want that, because the verses is where you are telling the story of your song. That is the narrative for your song. That's where it takes place. That's if you write narrative style like I do. That's where all the action for your song is going to take place. And you don't want your listener to become passive and disengaged and disinterested during the verse, and only engage in the chorus, because the problem with that is that all that your listener will end up knowing of your song is the chorus. Do you really want that? Do you really want them to only know the chorus, which out of context is going to be weird? No, you don't want that. You want them to know the context of the whole song and understand the song and emotionally engage with your song. So, how do you resolve that problem? How do you prevent yourself from falling into danger number 1? And that is the arrangement. So, what do I mean by that? Well, that means with each successive verse, you need to dress up that verse ever so slightly differently. So it's like having costume changes in a film or costume changes in a theatre play. Same actors, same characters, different scenes, different scenery, and quite often there'll be a costume change. So, your main lead guy may be wearing a white shirt and black trousers in the opening scene. So that's kind of your first encounter with the lead character. That's what he's wearing, and he has a side parting. That's how he looks. He looks efficient. He looks businesslike. That's kind of your first encounter with him. But as you progress through the theatre show, you will find that there will be costume changes. You'll see him wearing pajamas maybe, or you'll maybe see him wearing t-shirt and shorts, or something else, but it's the same character. And those costume changes, they allow the theatre goers who are watching the show to remain engaged, because they see the same character, but in a slightly different context. So what we have to do as songwriters is the same kind of thing. Is we have to try and work out a way to make sure that the same characters are consistent all the way through the song, but that there's a little bit of ear candy. There's different scenery, there's different clothes on the characters. And you can do that with the arrangement. So, for example, you can introduce maybe a trumpet obbligato, or maybe a saxophone obbligato. What's an obbligato? An obbligato is kind of like a counter melody. If the melody and the vocal is kind of like your question, then the obbligato is the answer. It's another melody that runs concurrently and maybe even responds to the vocal melody in some way. And so you can introduce things like obbligatos. You can introduce a different sound altogether, like let's say you have not had the Hammond organ play through the first 2 verses. Introduce a little bit of Hammond, just a splash here, just a splash there, or maybe some strings. like I did in the opening song there, Sundown Susie, that you heard. There are no strings until you get to the saxophone solo. And then that last chorus, the strings continue a little bit in the background. And then the strings ramp up again to support the alto sax with, some slightly different harmonizations than you had before in the strings. So things like that are what are going to keep your listener engaged. Now, you can overcrowd it, and that's one thing you don't want to do. That's kind of danger number 2, is that you overdress things, or you dress things up for the wrong occasion. There's no point in dressing your lead character up as a serial killer if that's not what the narrative of your song states that he is. So, have a think about those kind of things. What can I introduce that is going to set the same melody that we've heard already and the same chord changes that we've heard already, but in a slightly different light? So you can do things differently. Maybe you change some of the harmonic qualities of the chords. So maybe, your verse is 1, 6, 2, 5, and that's your... If that's your main thing, your main set of chord changes for your verse, well, you can change some of the tonal characteristics, or you can revoice them, reharmonize them a little. Well, not reharmonize them, but just kind of voice them a little bit. So maybe instead of going, the bass is going, which is going to be boring, right? If you're doing that in 3 whole verses, that's going to get boring. So maybe your first verse features that, but maybe the second verse, maybe you do this. Maybe you put the third in the bass. And then maybe change that A minor into like a C6 chord, because it's A minor with C in the bass. And then F over A, and then G over B. And it just creates a different sound, something else for the listener to go, oh, hang on a minute. This is the same thing, but it just sounds a bit different. So those are the kind of things to think about that can make sure that each successive verse sounds the same but different. So a lot of times what a lot of arrangers will do is they will have a fairly stripped down arrangement for the first verse, and then gradually as successive verses go by, they will add instrumentation in. So maybe you have, maybe it's acoustic guitar, bass, very light drums, and just the lead vocal, maybe a very dry lead vocal for the first verse. Then everything opens out for the chorus, and it's nice and big and expansive. And then in the second verse, you maybe add another element. Maybe that's where you bring your piano in. Or maybe that's where you not only bring your piano in, but you add a little bit of delay to the lead vocal. So the lead vocal now has a little bit more room, a little bit more expansiveness to it. And maybe you bring in some backing vocals. So stuff like that is kind of what you maybe should be thinking about. But it's a good question. In fact, it's a great question. I really like that. Is there a difference between pre-chorus versus a bridge? Never quite understood whether they are the same thing or technically different. I think the way I think about it is a pre-chorus leads into the chorus, hence the word pre in front of it. However, a bridge to me is kind of introducing new material, kind of a little bit like a middle eight would be. So to me, middle eight and bridge are ostensibly the same thing. So maybe your middle eight / bridge leads into your solo section, which then leads into your final big, fat, huge chorus that leaves the listener with being totally blown away by your song. And the pre-chorus is like, for me anyway, it's like, the equivalent of doing an extended, what I would call turnaround, setting the listener up for heading into the chorus. So, you know, again, going back to our 165 chord changes. Our little turnaround setting us up for our chorus. And now we're into our chorus. So basically all I did there was I went 3, which is E minor, 6, 2, 5, 5 over 7, 3, 6, and then I went to first inversion C major, which is C over E, then F, and then G, and now we're launching into our chorus, which is just, you know, 1 to 4, to 1 to 5, and then 1 in first inversion, so C in first inversion, C over E, F, then D7 over F sharp, leading you into that G sus4 to G7, and then you're back, and you can do your little interlude setting up for verse 2. So that would be the way I would do that, and yeah, that to me is how a pre-chorus would work. So that whole section there would be the pre-chorus. Chorus. That would be how that would work to me. But there's nothing set in stone with a lot of kind of these terms. Verse, chorus, bridge. They all seem to be a little bit interchangeable. So there is that. Chris says, last time I played acoustic guitar I was wearing a pink dress. Yeah, that's more information than we ever would need to know about you, Chris. And of course, we want to see photographic evidence. You know we do. Paul Morgan says, what to do when you have written all the lyrical scenarios you can think of? How do you expand beyond your lexicon of rhyming couplets? Break away from rhyming couplets. If you're stuck with rhyming couplets and you're finding that your rhyming couplets just sound hackneyed and cliched, break away from them. Do something different. Instead of, having couplets, do something that I think Eminem calls it compound rhymes, which is where he calls it compound because he compounds rhyme upon rhyme upon rhyme. So, he would have one word and then he would immediately, the next word rhymes with that first word, and then the next word rhymes with both of those words, and then the next word rhymes with those previous 3 words. He will do that maybe in like over the course of 2 lines of his song. So a lot of people he calls that compound rhyme. It's also regarded as internal rhyming. So rather than having the rhyme at the end like Shakespearean couplets does, which is what a lot of contemporary songwriters use, couplets, Shakespearean couplets, where it's alternate lines that rhyme. But you can do internal rhyme, so you can have the rhyme in the middle of the line rather than at the end. So there's things like that that you can do to kind of change it up a bit. So maybe your first verse has your rhyming couplets. Maybe your second verse has no rhymes whatsoever. Or your chorus maybe has no rhymes whatsoever. So nothing rhymes with, there's no rhyming scheme within the chorus at all, for example. I've seen that done, and I've seen that done very effective. Sting actually is a really good exponent of that. Quite often his songs will have, a very obvious couplet rhyming scheme for his verses, but then when he gets into his chorus, the chorus doesn't rhyme at all. and that provides the contrast. But when you are doing non-rhyming, you have to find a way to make sure that the lines work well together. So you can do that by something called assonance, where you have a word that sounds like another word. So there's other lexicographical skills, there's other literary devices you can use apart from just couplets. So things like assonance, simile, pun, all of those are devices that a songwriter should make use of. Slang, heck, use slang. I do it. I use slang quite a bit. I have 2 different rhyming dictionaries. I have one which is just like a standard thesaurus style rhyming dictionary, and then the other one I have an urban dictionary, and then the third one I have is a slang dictionary. Because sometimes I'll be reaching for a word and I'll go, that word just doesn't really express it. And that's when I'll reach for either my urban dictionary or I'll reach for a slang dictionary to find another word that says the same thing. So those are devices that you can make use of. I would definitely recommend you try those. Just Bob says, but can't you use a pre-chorus as a bridge? Kind of merge both the pre-chorus and bridge together with a line that is sang on top of it? Yes, you can if you want to. Ronald says, what is a refrain? A refrain is kind of like the preamble to a song. And it was very popular maybe in the 1920s, 1930s. Gershwin and Rogers and Hammerstein used it quite a bit. There's a famous song that was one of my signature tunes for a little while. Hang on, I'm too low down. Hang on. Some of you might recognize that tune. It's called My Funny Valentine. And that's kind of like the verse. But there's a whole section of the song that exists before you get to that verse, which is called the refrain. What does the refrain do? The refrain sets the scene for the song. It's kind of like your prologue. I remember there used to be a TV show that was kind of like a detective show, and it always started with a prologue. And they even had a caption that came up that said prologue. And you'd have this scene that would last maybe 7 or 8 minutes. And that would set up the whole of what is to follow in the main body of the show. And then you'd have an epilogue at the end. They're kind of bookends. And they are a literary device, but filmmakers and TV screenplay writers have used it quite extensively. And of course, songwriters use it as well. Like I said, George and Ira Gershwin made use of it. Richard Rodgers made use of it. Irving Berlin was a good exponent of the refrain. And it's usually related in terms of, musical composition. It tends to be related in that the melody kind of hints at melody that is yet to come. So it's kind of a little bit like an intro is kind of the modern refrain, but kind of not really, because what we've done with the intro is we've taken the whole concept of the refrain and shortened it to bare bones essential elements, whereas the refrain would actually set the scene. Now it kind of serves to kind of set up the mood to get you into the song, or to set up the groove, to set up the vamp that gets you into the song. And I just saw myself on my preview do that. That's hilarious. So yeah, that would be that. That's a refrain, but that's a good question as well. Chris says, given your current setup, would you rather have a Neve 1073 mic pre and a U87, or a Rhodes in mint condition and an old DX7? Great question. I already have a Rhodes it's not in mint condition, it's in actually reasonable condition, and that lives downstairs. I don't have it in the studio, mostly because it's too damn heavy to get up the stairs. But yeah, and I love that instrument. It's a beautiful instrument. It's the 73 key Mark II, I think it is. Yeah, it's the Mark II. And it's a really classic, beautifully made instrument. But that said, you know, you can't really go wrong with a 1073 pre and a U87 mic, although they are ludicrously expensive. And the only really contextually, I think context is probably the key to this question, because I don't tend to record anybody else in this room apart from me. So I would have to work out whether the U87 is going to suit my particular voice. It might not. You know, something simpler might suit my voice better. But, you know, a Neve 1073 is a nice sounding pre anyway, whatever mic you put in front of it. But good question, though. Like it. Like it a lot. Billy Morgan, I think, is trying to audition to be a baseball umpire. But there you go. So we've got like 5-6 minutes left of the show. Hang on, I've not touched my cup of tea at all. Hang on. So I hope that you have found this show useful. I hope you found, even if you didn't ask a question, I hope you found kind of the things we've talked about, and the answers to the questions I've given have maybe taught you something you didn't know, or they helped expand concepts that you have some understanding of, and you've gained a little bit more understanding of. I hope that that's been valuable to you as well. Like I have said previously, I demonetized this channel, so that's why there's no super chat anymore. And I've explained why I did that extensively in previous shows and in previous videos. However, there is a link to my PayPal account in the description below, and so if you feel so inclined, and the this show and the Sunday Night Live show is of value to you, then certainly do feel free to make a small or moderate or large donation, whatever you feel is appropriate. And, you know, however much you think what I do and what Jonny does is of value to you, go ahead and feel free to do it. There's no obligation. You don't have to make a donation if you don't want to. I'm not asking, you know, for it. I'm just saying it's there. If you like what I do and you like what Jonny and I do together, then, you know, certainly we appreciate your support. Whatever that support comes, you know, however that support comes, that's a better way of saying it. So if you have found that useful and you'd like to do that, then definitely go ahead and do that. It would be greatly appreciated, and it would help me to keep doing things like this, keep doing Sunday Night Live, keep doing these solo shows of Songwriting Simplified, and also making other videos. I've got a whole list of videos that I want to make over the course of the next 5 to 6 months. I've got a massive list of videos I want to get made and get up on the channel. So if, you know, that interests you and you'd like to help make those kind of things happen, then hit the PayPal account, and it would help a lot. It would help going towards paying for the time and the effort, and of course the electricity bill to make these videos happen. So on that note, I'm going to say a big thank you to everybody for coming, and we're going to end it there. And if you liked Sundown Susie, I might just play to play us out, I might just play another song from that very, very old album, Swings on Roundabouts, which is no longer available. But if you're up for it, I could certainly play another song. Why not put a permalink of all your videos for on all your videos for donations? I have done. It's there. Yeah. Every time I upload a video, there is a link in the description to the PayPal account. So go ahead and do that. And if you're up for it, and I will see you on Sunday back here, Sunday Night Live. See you then, folks. Good night.
This morning, turned on the smart TV. There's a waxen lady praising her paper deity, and a man in a toupee with Texas Hold'em eyes. It's dollar signs for paradise. Cans of hairspray, diamond encrusted shoes, strutting across the platform like she's escaped from the zoo. Cut to the man with the toupee and Texas Hold'em eyes. It's dollar signs for paradise. Persuasion, reverse psychology, leaves a viewer spellbound, screw their credit history. He's the man with the toupee and Texas Hold'em eyes. It's dark.